Alors bonsoir tout le monde, bienvenue à
Good
cette...
evening, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this regular council meeting, August 8th, 2022. So with further ado, let's begin with our opening word. Dear colleagues, let's have the serenity to accept things we cannot change. Sorry, I'll start again here. Let's have the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, that's done. Call to order and confirmation of quorum by clerk. Do we have quorum? Yes, we do. Conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare this evening by the members of by councillors on the items that we'll be discussing this evening? None? All right. Adoption of agenda, but with the withdrawal of one item, 10.1.1. No? Isn't it with the nomination, the item dealing with nomination or appointment rather? Okay. 10.1.1 will be withdrawn this evening. So can someone propose a motion supported by Councillor Laboutier on the question? No questions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? 10.1.1 has been withdrawn. Presentations, inquiries, and petitions now. 7.1, inquiries by council members, Kodiak Regional RCMP. And before we go any further, I would like to welcome a young person who grew up here in Dieppe, Inspector Arsenault. Welcome to our meeting, Chantal. So are there any questions by councillor members for this is a baptism by fire. My question is this. In recent weeks, I've received comments from residents from various wards. And I know I come back to the issue of noise. I know you weren't there at the last meeting, but dirt bikes are the motocross bikes are what I'm hearing about this week. So those bikes are traveling on the trail. So I just want to see if you've had any feedback, and you don't need to answer me tonight, but maybe you could look into that, especially in the evenings. And I was told, I'm being told that it's going on past 9 hours. So the Mélenchon in that kind of area. So I just wanted to make that observation, and that's I've heard a few comments from residents on that issue. Oh, go ahead. Thank you. I've taken note. And no, you're right. I'm not aware of everything going on, and I was aware of the noisy cars, so I have a few comments that I'll make on that. But with regard to dirt bikes and other types of motor or motocross bikes, I haven't heard anything yet. All right, thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions. We're being generous with you this evening. So do you have anything that you want to tell the counselors? Yes. I just wanted to, my name is Chantal Arsenault-Farah. I'm the inspector responsible for specialized services for the Kodiak Regional RCMP. So some of you I know, I grew up in Dieppe and I'm very proud to come back. My heart is here in New-Brunswick. It's a beautiful province, and I've had an opportunity to work in the past 20 years in other regions, and the opportunity presented itself for me to come and work with great people like you. So thank you for the warm welcome. So I have a few points that I want to make, and it's to allow me to kind of get re-immerse myself in the region and to give you an update. With regard to community services, and I'm sorry that I'm repeating myself, but I just want to make a few comments. So our unit is spending a lot of time on, you probably heard that we have an initiative that's in place to address the issues with beggars or panhandling. So, and what we're doing is basically having an education campaign. So we talk to the people and we say, what you're doing here, it's not legal and you cannot do it. And we give them a warning. So we have a system with 2 warnings. And after that, we go from a warning to fines. And if they continue to continue, then they're brought to court. And in the last month, we talked to about a dozen or so individuals in the region, and I'm told that there's only one person that continues to repeat beg, and we'll have to bring them to court. But for the other people, that it had the intended impact, and so they stopped that behavior. Another initiative that we started at the beginning of the summer and that you probably heard of is the issue with noisy mufflers. So we're doing tests with the garage. So if there is a problem that's reported, or if we're on patrol and we hear something, we hear noisy vehicles, under 246, Section 246 of the Motor Vehicle Act, we can require that vehicle to undergo an inspection. So they'll go to the garage that's been assigned and they'll be inspected. So if the vehicle does not pass the inspection, then the owner has 14 days to rectify things so that it meets the regulations in New Brunswick, and they pay for the cost of the inspection. Now, if we report a car and there's no challenge or no issue, no deficiency, then we are the ones who pay those inspection fees. So to date, and this is still a pilot project, but we've had good results with it. And what we want is to be able to kind of spread the word in the community that there are standards in New Brunswick with regard to noise and vehicles, and that they have to be upheld, and that people will have to kind of take care of things. So this fall, the community unit is going to start its safe plans. So that has to do with schools. So we're going to be visiting all our schools in the month of September to make sure that everything's up to date. And we continue to check all our files that involve our youth at risk or at-risk use, and we try to intervene as soon as possible and direct them towards the service that they need. Now, with regard to the crime reduction unit, they are busy investigating the drug sellers, and they're very busy. They talk to people, and even in recent weeks, they arrested, or they stopped 3 individuals in the region. So there's lots of good work being done, and as you see, patrol cars are visible and they're out in the community. And we're also looking at with people who are homeless as well. We're making sure that we're keeping an eye on things. So basically, that was the update that I wanted to provide. All right, thank you. All right, are there any other questions, Mr. Godet? Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one other question. On Amiro Street in Fox Creek, if you're going towards Fox Creek from Dieppe, you have to turn left, and there are 2 cycling trails on either side. And do cars, do they have the right to pass over the solid line, you mean? No, the the path, the cycling path.
visuel, puis j'ai de la misère à me placer dans
I'm
ça.
visual, but I'm having difficulty
Fait que
imagining what you're talking about. Maybe you can give me,
mais
maybe you
on
can
dirait
kind
que
of draw it
tu
for
veux
me
pas
and I can check.
contourner du
But
trafic parce que tu veux pas
you can't
attendre que la
go
personne
around
vienne
traffic because you don't want to wait
Ouais.
for people. If somebody wants to pass and they
OK.
do they
Parfait.
have the right to go into a
Ils sont
cycling lane? I would say no, you're
parce
supposed
qu'ils
to
ont le droit
wait
d'embarquer dans la ligne du cycliste.
because you're going into the
Mais je me
cycling
disais, c'est
lane.
une problématique, on peut
But
regarder
if it's a
ça.
problem, we can take a look at it. And
En gros, je vais dire, tu vois les
but
gens faire ça tout le temps,
basically,
là, tu sais,
I
quand ils
mean, you
sont
see
sur
people doing
les
that a
lumières,
lot.
souvent c'est une question
And
d'éducation, là.
sometimes it's just about educating people and we turn our light on. Well, 2 weeks ago, that was happened. There was a car that wanted to turn left, and there was another car that went onto the cycling lane, and I think somebody got. I don't think anybody got hurt, but I just wanted to know if it was allowed. Are they
En gros, c'est
are
ça,
they
là,
allowed
c'est
to
des
pass on
gens
the
qui
right
font
hand
ça à
side?
ronde, puis
Yeah, it's
on dirait
basically
que
about
c'est des
educating people
décideurs
and
aussi.
just telling people, listen, if you take 5 or 10 seconds more, you can avoid an accident. All right, I don't see any further questions. So your baptism, you survived your baptism of fire. So it was, we're pleased to see you again in the region, and good luck.
OK, alors, question du...
All right, we're at item number 8, questions by members of the public. Did we receive any questions? Electronically? No, the answer is no. Okay, all right, we'll continue then. Adoption of minutes. So we need a proposal or a motion. So for the regular council meeting held on July 11th, 2022, motion by Conseiller Thibodeau and supported by Councillor Lajoie, that the, so on the question, no questions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So the regular council meeting agenda passes from July 11th, which brings us to item 10.2. No, sorry, 10.1.2, termination of service agreements, bylaw enforcement with our neighbors village of Cap-Pelé and Beaubassin-Est rural community. Mr. Simard. Thank you, Your Worship. So as expressed in the memorandum, we're looking, so this is followed by a white document about the increased region and an increase in the population. So we want to put the chances on our side to be able to provide good services to residents. So the termination, we had a 3-month delay, but we're giving 6 months. So it will be done in collaboration with Cap-Pelé and Beaubassin-Est. The financial impact of this is that we will be losing about $5,000 a year for the city of Dieppe. So that's what we're recommending. Thank you. Can I get somebody to read the motion, or the resolution rather? Mr. Brideau. Yes, of course, Your Worship. That council terminate the bylaw enforcement service agreements. Oh, you're not reading the right resolution. 10.1.2. Oh, my. So that council terminate the bylaw enforcement service agreement signed on April 11th, 2022 with the village of Cap-Pelé, and on April 10-2018 with the Beaubassin Est rural community. All right, the motion is motion by on the question. No questions, so all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the motion carries as presented. Which brings us to 10.2, finance. Mr. Simard, sorry about that. Yes, Your Worship. So with the departure of the Deputy Treasurer, it's good that we should sign somebody who can sign the checks, or we appoint somebody who can sign the checks. So we would like to appoint Marc Melançon so that he can sign checks. All right. Thank you. That Yvon Lapierre and Hermès Thibaudot, Deputy Mayor, and Marc Melançon, Chief Administrative Officer, be authorized to sign all checks issued and on behalf of the City of Dieppe. Motion by Councillor Godet, seconded by Councillor Turgeon-Roy. On the question. No question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the motion carries as presented. 10.3, community development now, and public transit bus purchase. So for the reading of the resolution, who would like to do that? Mr. Thibaudot. Thank you, Your Worship. The Council accept Kodiak Transpo's recommendation and authorize the purchase of a transit bus from Nova Bus at the estimated cost of $610,000 plus HST, payable to the City of Moncton, of which 40% of the cost will be financed by the federal government's Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, pursuant to the agreement attached to the memorandum dated July 27th, 2022. That Council authorizes expenditure to be defrayed from account number 3-3-20-12-7904, General Capital Budget, Bus Replacement Program, and that Council further authorize a budget transfer at the time of the purchase in the amount of $382,000 from account number 7-4-20-12-8920, General Capital Reserve Fund, to account number 3-3-20-12-7904, General Capital Budget Bus Replacement Program. All right, motion by Councillor Thibaudot, seconded by Councillor Brideau, rather, sorry, on the question. No questions, seeing no questions. Oh, there's a question from Councillor Boudreau. Thank you, Your Worship. From what I get from this does not meet our objections of fleet electrification, so it's more expensive. And there is a transit fund for zero emission transit that would cover 50% of the total eligible cost. So we could have applied for that. I don't know if there is a way to pressure Kodiak Transpo so that we can move towards electrification more quickly. I think buying a new gas-powered bus is not necessarily a good idea, since we're waiting for results in 2022. So I don't know if you have anything that you would like to add with regard to electrification. Thank you, Councillor. Now, the challenge right now is we are somewhat vulnerable with regard to the fleet. As you know, we used to have 4 buses that serve our set routes. but now we only have three for three our set routes. So when we need to replace one of those vehicles, it's Moncton that's helping us out right now. And the other thing is that the delivery of a new bus or a new vehicle is it takes about 10 to 12 months depending on what happens in that field. So even at this point, even if we ordered a bus, we would have at least a 12-month wait. If we wait for the electrification study, it's one thing to have the results of that study, and we're expecting it in early 2023. But then we have to look at the purchase, the putting in place the infrastructure for electrification. That's another 1 or 2 years, and the third one of our current buses may not be operational. So we agree with you that electrification is important and we have to move towards that, but the context requires us to buy another gas-powered bus for the time. And it's because of the delay and the time that it takes to transition towards an electrified fleet. So that's the challenge that we have right now. I don't know if that answers your question, but in principle, yes, we agree that that's where we're heading, and that's what we're working on. Well, no, I wouldn't want us to reduce services. That's not what I'm asking for. But if we are to take like a second-hand bus, could we get a second-hand bus that was already used by another municipality? Would there be a shorter waiting time than while we wait for electrification? Kodiak Transpo presented this as one alternative, but because of the if we get a second-hand bus, there are other challenges. There are other challenges associated with maintenance of those buses. So that was one of the solutions, but there is no guarantee that we'll have a bus. We'll be able to find a bus that meets our needs. So it's an option, yes, but it wasn't one that was recommended by Kodiak Transpo. Okay, so right now we're leasing the bus, the additional bus that's in our garage. Yes, we have a service agreement, and within that agreement, when we need a vehicle, we can get one. But Moncton's fleet was also reduced, so I don't know if they're going to be able to give us a second or a third vehicle. Sometimes it can be quite tight. And they have taken kind of they're trying to environmentalize their fleet as well. They're trying to prolong the life of their buses. So the entire network, it consists of older buses now that are slowly being replaced, but we're all waiting for electrification to happen. So we're all kind of in the same boat in that regard. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that there's a fund for zero emission transit, but we can't access it right now. Whereas the federal target is 40% below the federal target the federal government has a target, and Moncton's are looking for a 55% reduction with regard to 2002. So it's unfortunate that we can't move faster, but I understand that we have to wait for the results of the study, and that it can take quite a while to get that fleet. All right, thank you, Ms. Leboutier. Oh, Your Worship, my questions were answered. Councillor Turgeon-Roy, my question is for Luc. Now, in the memorandum, we see the fleet of vehicles. One is dated 2009, and it was bought at the same time that the fourth bus is no longer in service. So that means that could break down soon as well. So maybe we could look at Melissa's proposal. We could look into the fund, and it could help because we know that there is going to be another purchase coming in not too long. So that bus, or that 2009 bus, do we know what state it's in? Is it just kind of on its last legs, or it's okay, but we never know what can happen with a vehicle that's 12 years old with the mileage that it has. Now it does have a new motor that was put in about 4 or 5 years ago, but I don't know. But the body of the bus, we don't know what can happen. What I'm saying is we have to kind of anticipate that will be breaking down very, very soon. So we'll have to replace that. Yeah. Well, I also want to remind you that the funding that we got from the federal government under the program, the Canada Infrastructure Program, we also requested 3 minibuses. So we're looking at that possibility. So that could compensate for the fourth bus that's out of service. So that's part of the equation for us. And we're also looking to electrify those vehicles as well. So we're looking at varying the dimension and the size of those vehicles. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? No? All right. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Opposed? The resolution carries as presented. 10.4.1, renewal mutual aid agreement. Mr. Simard. Yes, for that, this is just about renewing the agreement with the airport, the Moncton Airport. The airport would be responsible for air crashes that take place elsewhere than on the and there were a certain number of improvements in the text. So I propose that we sign that agreement. All right, who wants to read the resolution? Or Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Thank you, Your Worship. That Council authorize the municipal signing officers to sign the mutual aid agreement between the City of Dieppe and the Greater Moncton International Airport Authority, Inc. for the provision of mutual aid in emergency situations. All right, presented by Councillor Turgeon-Roy, seconded by Councillor Brideau. On the question, no. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? That resolution carries as presented. 10.5.1, tender award construction, the Gauvin Block Phase 3. Mr. Simard. Thank you. So in this file, we're at Phase 3 of the development of that block. And so we're looking at closing the alley between Marché and Collège Street. And we're looking at putting in at burying wires and putting in a sidewalk as well. So it's kind of a special contract, and there's specific complexities. We received 2 bids, and we are recommending giving the project to Modern Construction 1983 Limited at the cost of 1.140850 million. And we also recommend authorizing EXP Services to undertake engineering services at the cost of $120,000 rather, as well as Bell Alliant, NB Power, and Rogers for $285,000, $195,000, and $55,000 respectively. All right, anyone who wants to read the resolution? Councillor Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. That Council award the tender for the Gauvin Block Phase 3 project to the lowest bidder, Modern Construction 1983 Limited, at the cost of $1,140,850 plus HST. Authorize EXP Services Inc. to undertake engineering services related to said project at the cost of $120,000 plus HST, and further authorize these expenditures to be defrayed from account number 3-3-35-58-7663, General Capital Budget, Downtown, Gauvin Block, Phase 3. And that Council authorize Bell Alliant, NB Power, and Rogers to undertake the work relating to said project at the cost of $285,000 plus HST, $195,000 plus HST, and $50,000 plus HST respectively, and further authorize these expenditures be defrayed from account number 3-3-35-58-7663 rather, General Capital Budget, Downtown Gauvin Block Phase 3, seconded by Councillor Gauvin. On the question.
Madame Leboutier.
Merci, Monsieur le maire. Puis, c'est une question d'information.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question for information purposes. I'm just wondering, why are we paying Bell Alliant, NB Power, and Rogers to lay some cables? Isn't it theirs? Aren't they theirs? I don't understand. Yes, Councillor. To answer your question, all the work that we do, whether it's reconstruction or anything that affects Rogers or other utility providers, they pay for it. But this time we are asking them to remove the cables from Champlain Street. And this is work that is related to that. Now, this phase here will require the underground cables, and we still have to serve the houses and the businesses that are on Champlain Street, but from behind. So there, we want to remove all of those cables in front of the houses, like here, for example, in front of City Hall. Everything is underground, and that's what we're hoping to do for the rest of Champlain, is to lay everything underground. So that's why that's what the city is paying for. So, okay, thank you. I understand. Any further questions? I don't see any further questions, so all of those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay? Carried. And that brings us to the appointment of a municipal planning director. Yes, Your Worship, it's already been done. But under the new Community Planning Act, there are certain terms that we must use. So it's an administrative procedure purely, but we recommend that we appoint Alexandre Ginard as planning director for the city of Moncton. Thank you. For the city of, yeah, I'm sorry. And thank you. And for the reading of this resolution, Councillor Lantaine. Thank you, Your Worship. So that Council repeal the resolution adopted on November 26, 2012, entitled Appointment Municipal Planning Director, and adopt the following. That pursuant to paragraph 10(1)(b) of the Community Planning Act, Chapter C-19, Council appoint Alexandre Girard as Planning Director for the City of Dieppe, and that said appointment be effective August 9th, 2022, and continue as long as said person remains employed with the municipality, or that the appointment is limited or rescinded by Council. And I'm very pleased to move it, Your Worship. Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded by Councillor Boudreau. On the question. No questions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. It is carried as presented. Now, we're on 11.1, bylaw S-12-2022, a bylaw respecting outside fires. And this is the time when we read the summary. If you allow me, Your Worship, before we read the bylaw, I would just like to indicate that just before the summary and before the text of the bylaw itself, for information purposes, I have given you the context for this bylaw. You'll remember that on January 10th, when we did first and second readings, I had received a couple of questions from councillors. I had to follow up on these and to answer those questions. As you can see here, I've added the context and a general analysis. I had been asked the number of active permits, the number of lots they apply to. I gave you all of that information. I also gave you some reasoning to justify the amendment, but also justify the status quo. By the status quo, fires would be prohibited from October 31st to the third Monday of April, if I remember correctly. That's the status quo, whereas the modification would allow them all year long. Now, there are just as many arguments for as against. So I've indicated all of those to the best of my ability and knowledge here. And following your reading of it, you have two options. Either you read the summary and give final reading by title only and thus move the amendment, or you do not proceed with the reading and we maintain the status quo. I have a little trouble, I must admit. I have trouble going in one direction or the other. I mean, this issue of outside fires, there are arguments for and just as many arguments against. So I leave it up to you, but I'm here to answer your questions. Thank you. To read the summary, to start off, Councillor Boudreau. Thank you, Your Worship. It wasn't for the reading of it, but rather a comment before we read it. Is that possible? No, we'll read the summary first of all, and then we can come back to your question following that, if you like. So who would like to read the summary? Councillor Le Boutier, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw S-12, 2022, a bylaw respecting outside fires. And I so move third reading. Well, Councillor Le Boutier, this is a reading of the summary, which you'll find on page 112 of your package. And if you could read that, please. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. So, summary. Pursuant to the authority vested in me in the Local Governance Act, a bylaw respecting outside fires, bylaw S-12, and pursuant to the authority vested in it by the Local Governance Act, Section 18, the Council of the Municipality of Dieppe duly assembled an act as follows: definitions, 2, extent and administration, 3, prohibition of the lighting of outside fires without a permit or authorization, 4, permits, 5, additional requirements for fireplaces, 6, revocation of permit, 7, fines and enforcement, and 8, repeal. And I so move the summary. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Le Boutier, seconded by Councillor Brideau on the question. On the question. Councillor Boudreau. Thank you, Your Worship. Upon reflection, I'm starting to lean more towards the status quo. As Mr. Simard mentioned, it's very difficult to choose one or the other. There are just as many valid arguments to maintain the status quo as there are to support outside fires all year long. Now, I'm leaning towards the status quo for the reasons that have already been given, mostly, but also for health reasons and pollution. And I also have concerns for about people who have heart problems or breathing problems in the winter. This comes into the houses. And in terms of climate change, how many greenhouse gases are produced by these outside fires? And the whole issue during a heat wave, to build fires after a heat wave. I don't think that helps the cause. It doesn't help the vision of uh, this green city. So I, I I mean, this is a part of our culture, having these outside fires to get together around a fire as a family. So it's part of our culture. I don't want to prohibit them altogether. But when I look at this analytically, I don't think there's any justification for allowing it all year round. In the summer, of course, it's it's a drier season. Perhaps we should have chosen to allow them just in the fall instead of just in the summer, so that it would be more neighborhood friendly, if you will. And I had a question. In the bylaw, it says that the fire must be put out completely before midnight. Doesn't that have an impact on our noise bylaw, which puts noise must end by 11 p.m.? Yes, you're right. 11 p.m. So I have a little bit of a difficulty with this. I don't know what others think of it, but could we have chosen other options in order to respect people who have breathing problems? And I'm eager to hear your opinion. Thank you, Councillor Lantaigne. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm split on this as well. Of course, I mean, this can meet the needs of certain citizens, but we do have rules in place, and if people follow the rules, it shouldn't cause too much trouble. So my question is, our bylaw enforcement officers, do any of them work in the evening? So, I mean, they drive up and down the streets to answer any complaints or to see if people are lighting fires? So do our bylaw enforcement officers work in the evening? The answer, Councillor, is yes. Not every evening and not every week either, but they do work in the evenings and weekends as well. Okay, so they would be able to do spot checks on as needed if there are any complaints, for example, if several complaints about a certain related to a certain address where a fire is too big or lasts too long. I think if they violate the rules, well, our bylaw enforcement officers can do their job. So I think I'd like to give the opportunity to people to light fires all year round if they follow the rules and the bylaws. And if we have the officers that do work evenings, well, then they can go around and do the work of enforcement. That's my opinion. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I'm thinking of people who have health issues, either heart problems or respiratory problems. But here, I read that smoke comes into the homes more so in the winter than in the summer. Now, I don't understand that. Could somebody explain that to me? What does it say? Well, it says here that smoke enters homes more so in the winter than in the summer. Oh, well, I would say it would be the opposite, no? Well, I would think so. But that's what I thought too. Well, if I remember that the report this comes from, and this was dates back a few years, it's just when it's cold in the winter, the smoke stays down closer to the ground, whereas in the summertime it goes up into the air, and that's the difference. In the summer, the smoke remains down closer to ground level, and so will enter homes more. But that's from memory only. The report dates back a few years. So in the text of this bylaw, could we write something for uh, for people related to neighbors, for example, who might have respiratory or heart problems? Good question. I hadn't thought of that, but that could make the enforcement of the bylaw very, very complicated. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I was just wondering if it would be possible. Well, well, with the wind that changes and air flows and we, if we were to take people's health issues into account, how do you apply it? How do you enforce it? Everybody feels it differently. So we'd have to, report on your neighbors or check up on your neighbors. And I think that would become an impossible task. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Thank you. First of all, thank you for the analysis you gave us, Stéphane, because I was leaning towards the status quo before, but with the information that you gave us, I think that the there would be very few people, maybe, I mean, one person has an outdoor fireplace, might, build a fire in the winter. So I don't think the impact is going to be that big. So I think maybe we could at least try it. I mean, we might be wrong. I mean, we might come back and change it again in the future. But if the request was received, it's a number of citizens are in favor. We did it, the survey. So I would be in favor of the amendment. That's my opinion. Thank you. Councillor Boudreau, sorry, Councillor Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. And I agree with Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Of course, whether we adopt this or not, we're going to receive complaints one way or another. But I'm thinking of our officers. We're going to have bylaws that are going to be very specific. We're going to have checks that they can do to check the type of outdoor fireplace or the fire pit. And if it's authorized, well, we continue. But the summer here is so short. And I was wondering the same thing as Councillor Thibodeau about fires in the winter time. I don't know. But I mean, summer and winter both exist and we have to get through them. We have very hot summers. There are bylaws against outside fires throughout the province. You can't build a campground fire, a fire in a campground, for example. So I think we should leave it the way it was presented, and we leave our bylaw enforcement officers the task to do the checks. We are the ones who are going to issue the permits. So at that point of time, you can ask what type of fire pit do you have or fireplace? And that's my opinion. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Godet. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going more towards the status quo side because, I mean, if somebody has a permit and whether somebody has a fireplace or a fire pit, how are we going to control all of that? And we're going to need more officers. I've received complaints about this and the whole issue of health and smoke that stays closer to ground level in the winter. I don't think that the bylaw officers, I mean, how are they going to control it? You don't know who has a permit, who hasn't purchased one. People might complain, but if everybody had a permit, perhaps, but I'm going to vote against because I think it should remain the way it is, the status quo. Thank you. So I think everybody who asked for the floor has spoken. Oh, Councillor Le Boutier. Yes, I'm going to vote in favor of this because, as was mentioned, we have provincial regulations during the summer. with all of the ventilation systems that homes have now, summer and winter, I think we can try this. And if I think most of us here around the table, even myself, 2 years ago, a lot of us had fires. I mean, wouldn't build a fire in the winter, but I know people who did, and they didn't even know they weren't allowed to technically. So I don't know how many people will actually build a fire in the winter. But for those who do want to, I think we do have rules and regulations and bylaws. And if we have 20 complaints a year on this, so I think we have to try, and then we'll see. Thank you. On the question, then, all those in favor of the resolution, in other words, of third reading, will signify by saying aye. No, we read the summary only. We didn't give it third reading yet. Yes, the reading of the summary. So once again, all those in favor signify, could you raise your hand so that we can count? The aye vote is 5. So yes, the yeas take it. For the recording of this, then, Councillors de Boutillier, Brito, Turgeon-Roy, Lantaigne. Yes? Yeah, those were the yeas. Yes. Okay. So now, third reading by title only. Who had read it earlier? Councillor Le Boutier. Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw S12, 2022, bylaw respecting outside fires. And I so move third reading. Thank you. It's been moved in third and final reading by Councillor Le Boutier, seconded by Councillor Brito. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. I presume it'll be the same yeas and the same nays? Okay. Well, at least we're consistent. Which brings us to bylaw C36. Mr. Simard. Yes, we're asking you to give first and second reading of bylaw number C36. There's a portion of land that has the name of Yvonne Street, and we're asking you to stop up and close. And Yvonne Street, which gives onto Dieppe Boulevard. Yeah, just in front of the golf course. Exactly. So by reading by title only, Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw number C36, bylaw authorizing the City of Dieppe to permanently close a portion of Yvonne Street, and I so move it by title only in first reading. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Turgeon-Roy, both of whom live in that area. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. Carried as presented. And as information, Yvonne Street was named after Yvonne Cormier, who was the owner of the restaurant. That was so long ago, I don't remember. The Fisherman's Paradise. Yeah, it takes a businessman who was probably there every week to remember the name of the restaurant, Fisherman's Paradise. Thank you for that. And so now, to give second reading, Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw number C36, a bylaw authorizing the City of Dieppe to permanently close a portion of Yvonne Street. And I so move second reading by title only. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Turgeon-Roy on the question. No questions. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. Carried as presented. Notices of motion, no notices of motion received this evening. Number 13, inquiries and announcement by members of council. Seeing as it's been over a month, I would say that it's probably Councillor Godet's turn. Thank you, Your Worship. I only have one thing to mention. I don't know if my question would be for engineering services, but on Amiro Street, when you're going down and you want to turn left, for example, and so there's a left-hand turn, and how many houses or how long before you have this? Oh, well, before you have a left-hand lane and a turn and an arrow there. I live on Pélagie Street, and there's a number of accidents there all the time. So I'm just wondering if we could get a left-hand turn lane. Thank you, Your Worship. We can look at that very easily. We need to do a vehicle count usually. We count the number of vehicles and see if it's justified. It's based on the amount of traffic and the possibilities they have to make that left-hand turn and how long it takes. So it can something that can be calculated to see if it's justified. Because yeah, when you're waiting there to turn left and you can't because there's so many cars coming up, and so cars behind me get impatient and they want to pass, and I don't know where they're passing, but they're passing on their right. And there was a fairly serious accident there just a couple of weeks ago, and there's a blind hill right there that for the traffic coming back. You mean the people coming up from Memramcook? Yeah. And the RCMP was there, and I talked to the officer, and the woman who was hit, I mean, her car was pushed right across to the other lane. So, I mean, it could have caused an even more serious accident. So now the speed limit has gone down to 50, and there's signs, speed signs. So it should get better, but I don't know. I'm always been worried that somebody's gonna back end me when I'm trying to turn left here, because if we can do something, that would be great, because that the whole area is growing, and it's just because of the spot itself and the blind hill for the traffic coming the other way. Okay, yeah, more expenses there coming up. Is that all for this evening? Yeah, that's all. Councillor Leboutillier, thank you, Your Worship. Now, on the same issue, but on Amiro Street, the speed limit was just dropped, and we talked about this at the last meeting. It was mentioned then that the speed limit had come down, and you know that it took me 3 times to see what it changed to. I didn't know if it had gone down or up, so 3 times I had to really look for the signals, the traffic signs. So I'm wondering if we could have some of these speed limit signs a little further up, because one of them is like, if we're going to Memramcook from here, for example, it's right there where the lights are. And I mean, there's a lot of traffic right there. So you're not looking at that. There's too many other things. And on the other side of Amiro, logically for you to, the only time you see it is when you've gone beyond, because there's the Irving there, and it's really small. And so when I turn at the Irving, and so it took me, once again, it took me, I don't know if it's a challenge, but I mean, perhaps we could put something up just behind the car wash as well, just past the car wash. And I think that's all. So we're not going to see each other again until September, I think. So have a good August 15th, a good Fête Nationale, and have a great vacation. Thank you, Councillor Boudreau. Thank you, Your Worship. I hope you're having a wonderful summer, everybody. And I'm going to wish you a good August 15th, because we're not going to see you that day. But I'd like to tell you that if the citizens want to get a hold of me in August, please send me an email, because my telephone is not working at this point, and we can make an appointment if you will, but by email. And during these heat waves, I'd like to remind people to stay cool, to stay indoors in cool places, to drink a lot of water, to wear light clothing. Don't remain isolated. Stay in contact with the more vulnerable amongst us. Make sure everybody is well. Keep your windows and your curtains closed to keep the cool air inside the house. And also on Amiro Street, do the panels have, are they blinking lights so that we could see them a little better? Are there any blinking lights?
Non, il n'y a pas de. C'est juste un panneau là.
No, it's just a regular sign. Okay, well, the last time that I was there, I too found that it was difficult to see. And we were the only car driving at 50 kilometers. I have the same problem. So I don't know if this is something that we can add, maybe just a flashing light that would kind of indicate an extra signal to people that there's been a change. Maybe that won't change anything, but sure. But just a suggestion. So otherwise, I wish you a good remainder of the summer. We'll see each other again in September. So thank you. Mr. Babet. I just wanted to add that we don't have flashing lights on signs, but we put signs that say new to indicate to people, and it draws a bit of attention. Maybe not as much as a flashing light would, but we put those signs in place for I think about 3 months, just to notify people that there's a new sign. So I'll look at the flashing lights, but it's not a regular practice that we do. Okay, thank you. Is that everything? Councillor Brideau, thank you, Your Worship. Well, one piece of advice is that we do have one or two electric signs that indicate signs, but I think that would be necessary on Amiro, or be very, very welcome. It would be a good suggestion. I've been past there at least 15 times, and I can tell you that people have been passing me. You know, I've been driving at 55, 50, and people are just speeding by me. So just so that nothing has changed. Another thing that I wanted to mention, Your Worship, is last Monday in Ward 1, we held our neighborhood party. It was a real success. It was hot that day. I wasn't expecting to see anybody because of the heat, but we had a good turnout, especially children, and they had a lot of fun. And then there was a crazy bout of rain, and I thought people are going to leave, but nobody left. Everybody stayed despite the rain. We talked to each other. We had a chance to meet a lot of new residents. So it was perfect in that regard. So I just want to say thank you to Samuel and his team that were responsible for organizing that. And next year, I think we should have a barbecue that starts a little earlier to try to draw even more people. But anyways, just so for August, for all Acadians and for the great city of Dieppe, I wish everybody a great August 15th and have a lot of fun. Thank you. Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. So this evening I have 3 points, but before I begin, I want to draw attention to neighborhood parties. In my ward, I went to the Yvonne Park, and there might have been a dozen people. There didn't seem to be a lot of people interested in that party, so I don't know if just people are gone or they're not, if they're at their cottages, but So my first point is I want to wish a great National Acadian Day to everyone, to my fellow citizens. And I would also like to congratulate Anthony Richard, who rated 13 in a disc golf championship in the United States, and he is now eligible for the World Championships in 2023. And I think it's worth pointing that out. We haven't had the disc golf course in Dieppe for a long time, so I think it's worth pointing that out. My third point is with regard to bylaw C35. I don't know if you saw the correspondence that I sent along with photos. I think we need to redefine that bylaw. I think we need to distinguish between herbs and wildflowers. And until I think we should be just suspending fines until we have a good look at that bylaw. We need to revisit it and make amendments. So that's all for me, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Thank you. I just have one information point, and it's actually a question for Luc Richard again, sorry. I want to know more specifically what's taking place on August 15th with regard to the Tintamarre. How is it going to operate? What time is it going to be happening? Where do people gather? I know it's been announced on social media, but there's no details. So it's just for the public so that we can have a bit more information. So there hasn't been much happening in the last 2 years. So we hope that things will be back in style. Yes, I don't unfortunately have all the details. I know that there are plans, and I know that Zachary Richard will be at the Musical site, and there will be a Tintamarre. But with regard to the location and times, I'll check with the communications. Yeah, I think so. The Tintamarre, is it a Tintamarre in our cars or by foot? In what I've seen, it's just been written. We just see the word Tintamarre. So, other than that, well, happy National Acadian Day on August 15th. Councillor Lanting. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in vacation mode, so I don't have anything to report other than just wishing everybody a continued great summer and happy National Acadian Day as well. All right, thank you. Well, I have a few things myself, just a few reminders. So there will be ceremonies at Place 1604 to commemorate the 4th anniversary of the Dieppe raid. So the ceremony in Dieppe, New Brunswick, will take place on August 21st, normally around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I encourage people to come out and to gather their thoughts, especially, given the current world context. We don't know where things are headed with in that regard. So at the Musical site on August 15th, we have some great visitors. And there's also another large public event that's coming on the August 26th and 27th. Again, at the Musical site. It's a big concert of country and Western music. And I know that there are a lot of country and Western fans in the southeast of the province and throughout New Brunswick in general. So we hope it'll be a success for the venue and also for the organizers. So other than that, I want to, as everybody else has done, I want to wish everybody a great National Acadian Day. Be healthy, but have fun. Have a good evening.